That's right. Welcome to church. This is great. Love it. Have you noticed that change and transformation requires discomfort? Yeah? Some of you are like, oh, Pastor, talk to me about that. Well, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Change and transformation requires what I call as a chiropractic adjustment. An object at rest will remain at rest until a force acts upon it. Right, kids? Waking up in the morning? An object at rest will remain, actually, adults. An object at rest will remain at rest until, there's a force acting upon it. It is like that, isn't it? And the amazing thing is that the Lord knows that about us. After all, He created us. And in our text this morning, I'd like you to see the disruption. I'd like you to see the discomfort that took place. But it actually turned out to be perhaps the right move. And when I say move, it's not a pun. The pun was not intended. But you'll see what I'm talking about. The text is in Acts chapter 8, starting with verse 1. Acts chapter 8, starting with verse 1. We will read the first 4 verses. So only 4 verses for today. Acts chapter 8, verse 1 starts with the following. And Saul approved of their killing him. So clearly we are picking this up in mid-thought. And we're going to come back to what this is referring to. And Saul approved of their killing him. On that day, a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem, and all, except the apostles, were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Godly men buried Stephen. So we're talking about Stephen when Saul was approving of this killing. Godly men buried Stephen and mourned deeply for him. But Saul began to destroy the church. Going from house to house, he dragged off both men and women and put him in prison. Verse 4. Those who had been scattered preached the word wherever they went. Okay, so my friends, on that day a great persecution broke. It's talking about the previous chapter. That's when they killed Stephen. And Stephen was a leader in the church. And this is important, by the way. Why is this day important? And I'll come back to that to show you why this is critical to what's happening. On that day, on that particular day, something changed. And I think all of us can point back to historical events that changed the world. Well, on that day, their world changed. It's important, that day. So, we're talking about persecution. And in the middle of persecution, there were 2 reactions. The first reaction, we're going to stay, we're going to endure this, we're ready for it. And the second reaction is like, nope, we're out of here. We're out of here. And that is something that in the persecuted church today, that's a decision that is being made. This morning, there are families that are making that decision. Do we stay and receive the persecution head on, or do we take off? Do we flee? Do we pack up the kids? Do we pick up whatever belongings we can carry, and do we leave? Well, some chose to stay, others chose to leave. It's interesting that the text does not praise one group or the other. The text does not give any indication that one group made a better choice than the other. It just says, everyone left, apostles stayed. Now, I know that sometimes we read into the text our own preferences. So we think, well, clearly the apostles were the brave ones. It doesn't say that in the text. So the text just presents the fact that others left, they stayed. Do not read into the text your Western mindset, modern 21st century. It's not in here. So 2 reactions, remain or flee. Those that remain, we see Stephen mentioned again because he was mourned, he was buried properly. So clearly Stephen is a key individual. Something important happened here when Stephen died. And what I want to show you is the fact that when Stephen died, he was able to see the heavenly realms in a very plain way. And in the heavenly realms, what he observed is Jesus standing at the right hand of the Father. When a ruler stands, there's something important that's taking place. Most of the time you'll see a ruler on a throne. You'll see them sitting down and everybody else around them standing out of respect. So the ruler is the one that is, I am in a position of rest, and all the others, the courtiers, are in the presence of the ruler, of the king, and they are the ones standing. But Lord, watch out when the ruler stands, because either the ruler is about to get very intense or there's something happening that is getting that ruler's attention in such a way that is no longer appropriate to us to sit. We must stand. He must stand as a ruler. And I wonder if at that point in time it wasn't just the killing of Stephen that was taking place and made him stand, but he realized and he knew, because he knows the future, time is nothing to him. He knew what was about to happen. So a ruler no longer sitting down. On that day, Stephen saw the heavens open. On that day, the persecution started. And on that day, the ruler of the universe stood up because of the persecution. It wasn't something like, oops, the church is being persecuted. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do about it? He knew about it. He was ready for it. It's the course through which the church must go. That adventure that video was talking about. So that's what happened on that day, and Stephen is being mentioned over and over. It's clearly important. What happened there, the vision that he had, is clearly important. On that day, however, a young man who approved of the killing, he was no innocent bystander. He approved of the killing, and while he approved of the killing, after the killing, he said, that's what we got to do to everybody who believes in Jesus. So Saul, in contrast to Stephen, started a persecution. And what I wanted you to see in this text is the persecution has very strong language of the persecution. This is no mere, we were offended by what he said. No, this is utmost torture. There's no other way of saying it. So Saul engaged in torture. Not only that, the text mentions women specifically. This is not an instance where it says there's a language here that is a general that means men and women together. No, he says that men were affected by this. And Saul did not just stop with the men, he went after the ladies as well, which is significant. It shows the brutality of the event. It shows the brutality of the persecution. And it's a text that says, well, they dragged them off, both men and women, and put them in prison. This is not an invitation. Sir, come with us. Ma'am, come with us. The dragging is a brutal action. And if you've been around history and understand, you also understand that when that kind of language is being used, it was not a gentle handling of the prisoners. It was a rough and brutal handling of the prisoners. So where's God? Where's God in the midst of all this persecution? Did he forget? Did he not see? God, where are you in the midst of... He's standing. And it's important because Stephen, when he was being killed, he saw the Most High God, the one who created the universe, Jesus, who came as a baby, Jesus of Nazareth, the creator of the universe. He saw him standing. So where's God in the middle of this brutal persecution? He's standing. He's not sitting down, standing. And here we go in verse 4. Those that left, those that fled. There's a school of thought that says that even those that fled were being hunted by Saul. So whether you stayed in Jerusalem or you went to Judea or Samaria, Saul was after you. So they're thinking they're safe. I don't think so. I don't believe that that's a safe environment where they went to. And yet, what we hear and read in the scripture here is that they started preaching the word wherever they went. So the intended effect of this persecution is to silence this group, to kill them off, when in reality the consequences, the effect is actually the opposite. The church is being scattered. I'm reminded of a block of salt. Imagine a block of salt, and it's here. And if I was to take the block of salt, and let's imagine it's winter. You won't have to imagine much. Just wait a few weeks, right? I know. Shame on me for prophesying that. All right. So imagine the block of salt, and you take that block of salt, and I put it in the middle of the parking lot. How much effect will the salt have on the ice and the snow? Minimal. Just a little bit. But you take that block of salt, you crush it. Ooh, poor block of salt. You crush it and you scatter it. What's going to happen? Do you understand? So do you understand that God puts these texts in here for us to understand that whenever we go through discomfort, one, there's transformation happening. There's growth happening. But perhaps He intended it. Perhaps He intended it for us to be scattered, to be the ones that show others His message. When I say show, I mean with your words and with your actions. Both are important. You can't just talk, blah, 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 Jesus this, Jesus that, and then somebody cuts you off and damn them. Where's my bazooka? You can't do that. So actions and words gotta match. So the persecution had the effect of spreading the gospel. How cool is that? Well, it's not cool for those that are going through it. All right, so what do we apply? What can we apply for us today? 21st century, 2,000 plus years later, what do we do? What can we take from here? Well, there's a lot of things, but I want you to know that God uses and allows discomfort for His purposes. Sometimes we may not understand His purposes, but He allows it. I dare say, and I know this is, but sometimes He orchestrates it. My friends, listen, the discomfort that you are feeling is in order for us to be transformed, to be moved, to have a life that is closer aligned with Him, a life that is higher dependency of Him. Imagine this. Families going through on a family vacation, and they just reached the Grand Canyon. And up to that point, kids are running around and they're looking, but now they're in the Grand Canyon. And they're going to go, oh, we're going to go down in the canyon. Oh, yes, you are. And the path is only this big. So guess what's going to happen? Instinctively, you're going to hug mom and dad a little closer. You're going to look down and go, oh my goodness, oh, can I hang on to your hand? Dependency. The calamity, the danger gets these kids closer to mom and dad, unless they're little rebellious kids that go, wee, and they fall off, they pay the consequences. But calamity and discomfort brings us closer to intimacy with the Most High God. And when that happens, we can be the messengers and the message all in one. You're right there, buddy. You want some water? Yeah, I'll probably get some water. All right, Anissa got you covered. Oh, you have a little water? Yeah, Anissa, she's got one, man. All right. Okay, so that's the first thing, discomfort for His purposes. Here's the second thing you can do, or you can take away this morning from the text. Those who remained in the calamity and those who fled remained committed to the gospel. Both of them remain committed to the gospel. One group is not better than the other. Those who fled were not cowards. I was reading a text, I was reading a commentary, and the author made it very, made the point that if you flee from danger, you're really not committed to Jesus. What I can tell you as one who lived under persecution in a communist environment, what I can tell you is that those that stayed and those that fled had the same level of courage and the same level of commitment. Which means that for us today, if and when the calamity comes, the Lord will guide you whether you stay or you leave. There isn't one action that is holier than the other. But you know what the action that remains constant between the two groups? They both remain faithful to the message. They both remain faithful as message and messengers. So if you flee, brilliant, go. I mean, my parents fled communism and we remain faithful to the message. I'm doing it right now. I'm preaching the message. Those that stayed, my friends who stayed back under communism, they remained faithful. Which brings me to my third application that we can take with us this morning. Our mission remains the same regardless of circumstances. That's why I always say stay focused to the mission. Political stuff can happen. Stay focused to the mission. The empires will fall. Empires will rise. Stay focused to the mission. So if we stay focused to the mission, regardless of circumstance, what changes? Methods. The methods change, and we must adapt. The way the gospel was preached 50 years ago may not be relevant in all the circumstances in which we are in. The message that was preached 100 years ago, first of all, it would be about a 3-hour sermon. Yeah, let's do that one day, huh? 3 hours? Isn't that crazy? They would stay and listen for an orator that long? And they might have 1 or 2 or 3 individuals speak? What? What planet were they from? Well, that's their time in history. And it's so hard for us to understand when our attention span is what? 20 seconds because of TikTok? I mean, hello. However, what we must stay focused on is we remain focused on the mission, and if we have to change the methods, let's do it. We've changed the methods of being the messengers and the message here at Agape. Our services are different. Today we continue worshiping the Lord by eating together. I hope you all can stay. Please do. We're going to lock the doors. No, we're not going to lock the doors. So there's a lot you can do to take stuff from this ancient text and say, oh my goodness, this is amazing for us today. God allows the discomfort, and it's for His purposes. So when the discomfort comes, it's like, Lord, why are you punishing me? Well, it could be punishment and consequences of your own actions. If I go, steal a car, and well, I don't know, maybe it has to be a few cars nowadays. But if I may end up in jail. And if I'm end up in jail, I'm in discomfort. Oh, Lord, it's your purposes that I'm in jail. Well, no, not really. You stole a car. But when discomfort comes that you have it's not a consequences of your own disobedience, you think, why me? It's the Lord putting in His purposes for you to go through that. And in that moment, when you're dealing with a difficulty situation, whether you stay, whether you fight, or flee, the Lord will guide you. It's wisdom. And then no matter what happens, no matter what the circumstances are, we adapt, we change. But we preach the message, and we are the message. So what can we do? What are some actions that we can do this morning? First thing I would suggest is bring your discomfort before the Lord. Speak it before Him. Lord, this is one of my challenges. I'm hurting because. You've got to bring it before Him. And you might think, well, but doesn't the Lord already know? Yes, it does. Yes, He does. But isn't it amazing when you come before the Lord and you bring this discomfort to Him and you bring the challenges and then you remain faithful to Him? You know what happens? Trust increases. God, why are you doing this to me? That's rebellion. Why me? I go to church, I do this, I tithe, I give. That's rebellion. But if you come to Him and say, Lord, I am in pain because of this. And He goes, I know. Lord, are you indifferent to this? No, of course not. I'm not indifferent at all. I'm standing. I'm paying attention. But come closer to me. In this difficult situation, come closer to me. Bring your challenges, bring your hurts, bring your discomfort before the Lord, and remain faithful. Trust will increase. Here's the second thing you can do. Focus on the mission, not the self. Now, I know this may not be popular because there's a mood out there in terms of, hey, I got to, focus on me. I got to focus on, my stuff. I got to, there's so much stuff happening in my world that I got to focus on me. I don't know how to explain this to you. The paradox is this. When you begin to focus on you, now I'm not talking about proper rest. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about being a workaholic. And I'm not talking about doing things that are not healthy from a spiritual perspective, from a biblical perspective. What I'm talking about, the kind of self-focus that is detrimental to your spiritual growth. The kind of self-focus that says, well, I got to focus on me and forget everything else. The paradox is that when we focus on the mission, when we focus on others, that which is hurting in us becomes a healing balm, if you will. You're hurting. You're in a place of despair. You're in a place where you don't see a way out. You see your health degrading. You see all sorts of things going on. And then I'm not saying neglect your health, but I'm saying instead of being so self-absorbed in what's going on with you, begin to look out. Begin to come alongside others that are hurting. Begin to say, you know what, the Lord might have a plan for this. And you stay focused on the mission. In the midst of this, I'm the message and the messenger. If I'm the message and the messenger, I stay focused on the mission, I am still in the hurt area. I am still in pain. I'm still in discomfort. And I do whatever it takes to take care of the needs and get healthier. But the paradox is, the miracle is that when you move away from being completely self-absorbed and you say, you know what, Lord, please deal with that. And in the midst of my pain and my discomfort, Lord, I am going to serve you as the message and the messenger. The paradox is that you begin to heal. And research is beginning to show over and over the fact that when we stop focusing just on the self, and we are consumed by self-care rather than the mission, we're going to get worse and worse and worse. So how about this? Be consumed by the mission and do the necessary self-care. Be consumed by the mission and do the necessary self-care rather than the other way around. Sometimes this society, this messages out there make us just be so consumed by me. And you know what happens? When you bring your hurt to Christ, trust increases. When you begin to focus on the mission, you do the necessary, do whatever is required. But that's not what's consuming you. This is consuming you. The mission. When you do that, you're beginning to see opportunities. Lord, I can minister in the midst of my pain too. Many are the stories of individuals who were imprisoned for the Lord. And rather than focusing on self-care, they focused on the mission. And when they focused on the mission, they began to see the opportunities of being the message and the messengers to their torturers. There was a young lady who was in that situation, and the guy that was doing horrible things, it's like, how? What are you doing? You're broken. You're crazy. You've gone mad, which people do, by the way. And she said, no, I'm not mad. But you're not likely to come to church, are you? I would never step foot in that. Well, church is here for you now. So she saw the opportunity to be the church, to be the message and the messenger for this brute, for this monster. Instead of focusing on self-care, she focused on the mission. And when she did that, she saw the opportunity. I would not be surprised that in your hurt, in your challenge, if you flip it, if you trust, you bring that to the Lord, you increase your trust in Him, and then you begin to focus on the mission more than the self, I wonder if you're going to see opportunities. And here's something else that you can do. Once you see opportunities, observe. Observe and adapt. Observe and adapt. You see the opportunities, observe and adapt. And when you begin to do that, you begin to be creative to do what God is calling you to do in new ways, in creative ways, which might not have happened unless you would have gone through the transformative circumstances of the discomfort. So sometimes the Lord, in order to grow us, in order to show us the trust that we can have in Him and that bond, in order for us to see the opportunities, He takes us with this discomfort. And when we see these opportunities, we observe, we adapt, and we can become more creative. Like, Lord, I can be a better message and a better messenger for you. And I would have never reached this unless I went through this discomfort. That's the message for today. Bring your hurts to the Lord. Increase trust. See the opportunities. Don't be focused on self. And as you do that, observe, adapt, and find creative ways to be the message and the messenger. That's our mission. Which the journey might be difficult. But that's what we got to look forward to. Do you understand? Good. I had to preach this to myself first because I'm not looking forward to discomfort. I'm a scaredy cat when it comes to that, I guess. But that's where increasing the trust comes in. Stay with me on that, folks. Stay with me on that. One step at a time. One step at a time. Stay the course. Make it a priority. Be here. Be encouraged. Stay the course. God is good. Dan?